fresh out the oven.
What is cracking, everybody? It's MegaPieman here, and welcome to another Look at My Map video. Now that Payload Midwest is done and up on the Steam Workshop, it's time to move on to another Payload map that has been in the works for quite a while. Now, a content creator, I guess is a way to put it. They make models and textures and that kinds of stuff, named Extra RAM from the TF2 community, TF2 Maps, TF2 Emporium, you may recognize the name, Twitter, if you follow Level Design TF2 stuff on Twitter. They were posting around some concept art they had for an Australian theme, or an Australian map, a little while back. And while people have tried Australian set maps before, even myself with CTF Kelly, CTF Kelly was more of TF2's Future Australia, where they have all kinds of advanced whatnot going on, but in like that retro-futuristic style. But for this particular pack and other attempts people have tried an Australia map, there's usually more time period fitting for the Australian bush outback, or whatever you want to call it, for the TF2 time period of late 60s to early 1970s. There's been maps like UEAK Crashes, in development unfinished, King of the Hill Outback. There's been maps such as Payload Outback, based loosely off of Meet the Sniper, the video backgrounds from that, and other Australian set maps. I don't know if there have been other Australian set maps. I do know that a couple creators a while ago got together and made a mini Australia asset pack. Whether or not we will use that for this project is something we'll figure out in the future, because this project is specifically based off of Extra RAM's content. There really isn't that much when it comes to trying to do an Australia map, and trying to make an Australian themed map that feels Australian instead of just looking Australian, I guess is a way to put it. Instead of just having like, here's a boomerang, here's a didgeridoo, that means it's in Australia. But trying to make a map that feels Australia is a little bit difficult to do, because Australia has one really, really big problem. It is so dang flat. It is ridiculously flat for an insane amount of area that it makes it difficult to try to make a map around that concept. Flat, while it may work well for the sniper in Team Fortress 2, considering he is supposed to be from Australia, it makes a little bit of sense, it does not work well for gameplay in Team Fortress 2. So, trying to figure out how to make a map thematically feel Australian and not more of a Mojave-type desert, American desert, such as the Badlands that you get normally from Team Fortress 2 desert themes, is a little bit difficult, because trying to figure out what to work with has been a problem. So, Extra RAM's ideas were more conceptually based in like drawing ideas for props here and there, such as a custom payload cart and that kind of stuff. And we have recruited Crazy Zark, who is a really experienced, I almost said well done modeler, but experienced makes more sense. And while Extra RAM, I believe they are Australian themselves, trying to make a map that feels like it's from that area, while also being playable in the way people play Team Fortress 2, has been a bit of a problem, mainly because of how we want the theme for this map to go. Now, this is going to be a mine theme, but it's not going to be all mine theme. What we want to do is break it up by stage. We want the first stage to be the least mine themed. Extra Ram's idea was that Blue Spawn would be like an old mine building that was then retrofitted or remodeled into a backpacker lodge, and then you would have Blue Team slowly working out of the garage from that building into more of a mine as the map progressed, with the first stage being the least mine and the third stage being the most mine of being actually underground, with stage 2 being a little bit in the middle. And third stage also being a little bit spy techy for the, TF2 spy tech. You got to have spy tech if you're going to make a TF2 map. Anyway, trying to do that has been difficult for me to figure out how to make a good balance between buildings and organic. Because like I said, Australia is very flat. So you don't have a lot of hills, valleys, walls or mesas like you get in the American West with the traditional Badlands and a map like Payload Hoodoo. I mean, hoodoos are a thing that exists in the American desert, but do hoodoos exist in Australia? I don't know. You see this land bridge that we have right here going out of Blue Spawn, this land bridge right there? I had to talk with Ram. We had to have a specific discussion. Does Australia have land bridges? So that I can make this a land bridge. Apparently there is a very famous land bridge in Australia called London Bridge, named after London Bridge in, London in the UK. But land bridges, they don't seem to be quite as much of a thing as they are in the American West or in other deserts. My microphone is bouncing up and down all over the place, and I don't know why. Hopefully it's not making any kind of background noise. So this actually ended up being a lot more building focused than I wanted it to be. I might change this around as development continues to try to make things a bit more organic, but the only way that I could really think of to make a flat land area playable is with buildings to replace the normal geometry. You can do some with hills and such, but not a whole lot because Australia, like I've said multiple times, is very flat. So I ended up doing more buildings for stage 1 than I really wanted to. I might try to transfer those back to being more organic or not. This is a video game, plus this is Team Fortress 2, so there are liberties to be had. Badwater Basin, in reality, does not look like Badwater Basin in Team Fortress 2. That's just how it is. So there are liberties that can be taken, and I highly suspect there to be problems with this map already. One of them possibly being sightlines, because as I said, we wanted to try to be somewhat natural with this, and this is set in Australia. And for the 100th time, Australia, you are just so flat. All right. So you start over here in Blue Spawn. This is actually directly based off of some concept art extra Ram did, and then everything else I kind of just put in as we went. This fancy angled building. I wanted to try to do a lot of angled buildings for this, or just angles in general. I'm really trying to get better with angles. Source doesn't like angles. It likes nice square boxes, but angles make for some really nice geometry to work around. And I mean, the last couple maps I've worked on, specifically Midwest, didn't really have a lot of angles, had a lot of 90-degree corners, had a lot of boxy shapes. I did what I could to try to make that more interesting, but there wasn't a ton that I could do with it, just based off of how the layout was. So, just from the starting layout, I'm really trying to get more angled shapes, because in reality, things aren't always boxy and square. You can do angles pretty easily when it comes to displacement work, but when it comes to, well, I guess not, pretty easy is the wrong thing to say, easier when it comes to displacement work, but when it comes to working off of props and brushes, brushwork themselves for angles, Source is not a great fan. But Blue starts back here in this bunk room. I don't know if I'll keep these here. These were made by Dr. Face from their Arctic Asset Pack, which is kind of weird that you have something for the Arctic Asset Pack that is in a map with an Australian theme, considering it's about as different of an environment as you could get, but I digress. When they come out of their spawn, they can either go to the left, to this high ground over here, and work on pushing out this way. They can go, that was to the right, not the left, that was the other left. They can go to the actual left, over here, and get not quite as much high ground, but still a little bit of high ground to start pushing out this way. They might still have to deal with people who are up in this area, at least immediately, but once they push them out, that can get some high ground here to help them push the cart away from the spawn. Now, I did that specifically because a lot of payload maps, I talked about this some in the videos I did for Midwest, a lot of payload maps have big problems when it comes to Blue's first spawn. A map like Payload Badwater, which was the first single-stage payload map in Team Fortress 2, has a massive problem where Red gets a ton of high ground right outside of Blue spawn, and I've played multiple rounds where Blue has just never been able to push out of their spawn. Upward has that problem too, it's not quite as bad. Borneo, which is a custom map, has that problem a little bit. If you can get past A, it's usually not too bad, but trying to get A is sometimes a big pain in the butt on Borneo, just because you don't have a lot of problems, and Red has a lot of height immediately when blue is coming out of their spawn room. What other maps? Hoodoo's usually pretty okay. Frontier is pretty okay. Frontier's a little weird, but it's pretty all right. There's another map that I'm trying to think of that I can't come up with. Gold Rush! Gold Rush! The first payload map in Team Fortress 2 at all. Gold Rush has a big problem with their A points, which is that either red team gets demolished immediately or they just hold A for the entire round. And that's not fun. That's really not fun. You want blue to be able to get out of their spawn room and at least attempt to have some enjoyment. And not just, well, I'm dead, spawned, dead, spawned, dead, spawned. You know, that's the way I play TF2 generally. It's not very fun. So I'm trying to stop that by having the area outside of blue spawn be blue oriented. The problem you get with that is some people on red team don't like that because then red has a hard time trying to get a forward spawn off of A. Personally, I think that's okay because blue being able to actually get out of their spawn and to a point to fight over instead of not being able to leave the dang building is a good thing. Them not being able to leave the dang building is a bad thing. So, moving on. If they want to take the main path, if they want to take the main path out of their spawn room, they can go this way, either to the left or right here. And then we have a little bit of a frontier thing where we have what will eventually be a custom payload cart. Right now, it is a placeholder of a van made by Crazy Zark. It is a UAZ van, which whatever UAZ means. I believe it's Eastern European or possibly Russian. I don't know what it stands for. But I have a couple other of Zark's cars over here outside of what is like a kitchen dining area thing. Because this is supposed to be like a backpacker lodge, at least for now. Whether it'll stay that way or not, I don't know. But for now, that is the idea we were going with here. So you got a place to sleep, a place to eat, a place to get your car worked on. But the idea in progress right now is that we will replace this model with a payload cart made out of a combi van. That it's sort of like a combi van that's been scrapped and repurposed to be a bomb on a cart. So it's not a van, it will be on a cart on the tracks, and unlike this right now, just being a van that's kind of just there with the tracks showing you where it's going to go. But it's a good placeholder. A little bit like Frontier with being a rideable and sizable payload cart, not like Frontier with the fact that it doesn't have a wagon behind the main thing. It's not like you're sitting on something being pulled by something. We're not using little choo-choo here or Rudy from Payload Whatville. Well, let's not talk about Whatville, shall we? But we didn't want a more sizable payload, a rideable payload, but not a super easy to ride payload. So that's what we come up here with the combi van idea in the placeholder of this. The combi van bomb cart should be around the same size as this, both length and height, possibly width. Whether or not that's how it turns out in the end, we'll have to wait and see. That is still a work in progress. Zark's made some good progress on it. Whether or not it'll be ready or it'll be in the next version of the map is something that we'll have to wait and see. And this also is one of the few times that you will see that the cart is in blue spawn instead of being outside of it. Payload carts are almost always outside of blue spawn, outside of Frontier, which I guess is so that blue team can easily get on to the cart and then push it out that way. Get onto the wagon behind a little choo-choo. But I was having some issues using little choo-choo, trying to get it to work. Did talk to Mangy Carface, who's the guy who made Frontier. Still having some issues with it, so instead of doing that, I just use this placeholder thing here. Since Zark's already on the team, it's their model. They made it. I don't have to credit somebody else. Anyway, what was I talking about? I was talking about, oh yeah, the cart being in blue spawn. It's not something that you really see. The only thing that makes it a little bit more complicated is you have to make sure that the logic that makes the cart move is deactivated until setup time is over and the doors open. Other than that, I don't know why people don't do it. The only thing that you lose is that you don't have stickies covering the cart as soon as setup is done and the doors open. But of course, with things like pyro, air blasting, and the short circuit in the game, stickies being on the cart immediately aren't really that much of a problem. Generally, once somebody walks out of a spawn, they either see that they're there, shoot them, wait for a pyro or an NG to get rid of them, and then they move on. So I don't know why people don't do it outside of just the extra logic that it takes to make sure that people aren't pushing the cart and the cart isn't moving before the doors are open. Because the cart is actually a physics object, which means that if it tries to move forward and hit something like a wall, it's not going to be able to go through the wall, it's just going to be stuck and confused, which is bad. Anyway, moving out, Red has some high ground over here that they can use to try to do a little bit of a forward spawn. They also, not a forward spawn, but a forward hold. They also have the high ground of the arch on the land bridge here that they can use to try and get a little bit of a forward hold. But hopefully it won't be too much, and a lot of this area is designed so that once Red loses it, Blue can then use it as their own high ground to push in to A. This might be a bit of a sightline problem. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. Hopefully the flank... Pardon me while I adjust my chair. Hopefully the flank of the land bridge makes it less of a problem, but we will see how things actually play as time goes on. And then they push into A. A has some good high ground for Red team, some good high ground for Blue team. Whether or not it's too much for either side, I am not entirely sure. But a big thing that I'm trying to figure out with this is how to handle this building. Now, I wanted this building to go from being a red building to being a blue building. Once A is captured, Blue can then use it to go forward and get to B, which is all the way over down here. Might be a little bit too long for a cart path, but I'm looking at something like Hoodoo and Enclosure, and their cart paths are pretty long, so I think it'll be okay. I might shorten it as things go on, we shall see. But then they will be able to use this building as a shortcut a little bit to get through there. But the problem that I was having is that if Blue can use this building too easily, too early, then they'll be able to flank around Red's defenses at A, and Red won't be able to do anything. So the thought is that they have to either go up this staircase in order to get into that building, or go around this way in order to get into that building, which hopefully uses up time. Not too much to make it not worth using as a shortcut, but enough to make it so that it's not too much of a problem before A is captured. I played around with adding a door that would open and shut here based on A being captured on. I couldn't really get it to a point that I was happy with it. I'm still not satisfied with this building, but that's how it is for now. We'll see how things go with testing. This building over here, you got some nice flanks. I don't know what's going on with the face. Why is it red? It might be invalid, but it's not breaking anything, so we'll move on from here. Blue team can use this to quickly get up here and attack Red team, or can flank around and go up these stairs in order to attack Red team that's holding up here. There's some nice ammo, full ammo right there that Red can use for teleporters and NG nests for going out of this way and going over this way. And there's a lot of open windows and such that they can also use to watch the point. Might be a little bit too much for snipers. Again, we shall see. Once A is captured, Blue can then go down this way to get to this tunnel area and easily move their way around behind any sort of hold that might be back here. They then, of course, have easier access to this building that they can use to work around getting to this side where there's a full health kit, not ammo pack, health kit. I want to use this big open container. So this open container model has been in Team Fortress 2 for a very long time, but it's only used once in one spot in Frontier, and it's a really weird place to have it. I want to use this prop because I just really haven't seen it used much, nor used in a very useful way. So if I can find a way to make this open container very purposeful and have a reason to exist on the map, then I want to do it. So I'm sort of using it as a bridge here. There is an open container in a map like Mercenary Park, but they reskinned the containers there to be less like containers and to be more like animal crates. So I'm trying to use the actual shipping container. Plus it allowed me to use the shipping containers over here to block this off. Shipping containers are a nice sizable prop, but they are kind of boring, and you do see, at least when it comes to testing custom maps that aren't finished or by people who don't really know how to fill space, you do tend to see a lot of crates and shipping containers all over the dang place. Plus, you got a map like Granary where they're all over mid. So they're not the most creative thing to use, but I think they will work for this particular part of the map. Blue does have all of this uphill battle to do. I played around with possibly having red team be able to get on top of this building, but that really just seemed like it was going to be too much high ground. So instead, they can just get on the roof of this porch area instead of on top of the roof of the actual building. And then you go around past this silo, and you get to some high ground that red can use to defend B, some high ground that blue can use, go around this fence, go up here to attack B. I don't know what's going on here. And you have red spawn, which is over here. When they pop out of this building, they have the option of going through this route to get over to here. They can go through this route to get down here with some nice cover. Or they can take this tunnel route to get over here for some nice height advantage. Might be a little bit too much, but again, we will see how that is with testing. And that is the current state of Stage 1 for Payload... I almost said Payload Midwest, because I'm so used to saying Midwest. But no, this is Payload Down Under. There are a lot of vehicle props in this map when it comes to pickup trucks and Land Rovers specifically, because Crazy Zark has a lot of ideas for Australian-themed vehicles, and eventually these Land Rovers and the pickup truck over here will be replaced with those props when they are ready to go. At least that's the idea, so they're placeholders at the moment. But that is the state of the map. Let me know what you think. The heck was that sound? What? That was odd. Did I make that sound? Did that come from me? The heck? Anyway. Yeah. Let me know what you think of the map. Let me know what you think of anything else. Once A's captured, this path opens up to allow blue team to get down here a little bit easier. Whether or not that will help, we'll have to, again, wait and see. I'm Mega Pie Man, and thank you very much for watching.